So today I want to review AEW Dynamite March 20th from Omaha, Nebraska. And what I want to say is that, I really liked the show a lot, and it's definitely showed a bunch of improvements. And with AEW, the biggest thing that they have to do is just get better and better with every single show. Like, listen to the feedback, listen to the criticism, and eventually they're going to make that. Or, what, as the old saying goes, in business, if you are not caring, or if you are not growing, or you're not improving, you're eventually dying. So the things that I liked about the show was that AEW did one thing that they have a bad habit of. They did one thing right, which is they did not have somebody be outside the ring more than 10 seconds. And when everything I watched in the show, they had people outside the ring, but they followed that rule. If it's a regular match between two people, they didn't violate the 10 count. And because I've had an issue with that with AEW, like when Will Ospreay and MJF had a match, they were outside the ring for a couple of minutes when it's a regular match, really. And I don't like their bullshit of, oh, well, a referee can suspend the 10 count rule. So I appreciate that. And also, too, that their continuity was a lot better, and they didn't overload the show with matches, really. So I really feel that it was a very strong show. They had to really keep it up, and I feel like this time they really cared about the show. I felt like last week it was almost like, well, we have a pay-per-view and everybody just wants to take it easy. Here I felt like they understand that Dynasty is coming up. They have to make sure that that's a big draw, and ultimately the only thing that's appealing to AEW is their pay-per-views. That's how they make bank. So they have to make sure the pay-per-view that's happening in 2 weeks from now is a banger, just like every other thing. They don't want to hurt their momentum. So I'm going to go over the show and talk about it. That it started with a four-way match for the International Championship contendership. So I want to say that, unfortunately, I was finishing up cooking my dinner, so I wasn't able to watch much of the match. But I did see a really cool spot where Mike Bailey slid out of the ring, and then he grabbed Ricochet and did a move on him, like a Hurricane Rana. So that looked really, really sweet. And then the other thing that I liked is that with Mike Davis, even though I've said a lot about the Don Callis family and the big men getting pinfalled really easily, it was good that it took two people to pin him, because it actually makes him look strong, because you can't be doing this thing where big men are consistently not winning, or if they win, they have to be, or if they lose, it has to be like a odd or a feat of strength. There has to be like two or three people pinning them, because you need to sell, people are strong, really. And like I've said, that I'm not happy with the Don Callis family losing too much, because if they lose too much, it makes them look bad. They have to actually, have victories or gain titles. You can't just have them kind of lose all the time, really. So I am hoping that they do Kyle Fletcher versus Daniel Garcia. I think that would be a really great match. That would be something new and different. But with that said, I was happy that Ricochet and Mike Bailey got the pinfall. So it's now it's not a triple threat between Omega, Mike Bailey, and Ricochet. Because I think that a lot of people were predicting Ricochet and Omega, but easily they can have a rematch at AEW Double or Nothing with just Ricochet and Omega, just so it feels like, okay, what would happen if it was one-on-one, really? And with Mike Bailey, I think adding him is good, because, he's a new star. You want to make sure that when you add new people, you give them a chance for a while, you see what they can do. You give them a big spot in the beginning. You don't do something it's not like when they signed Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy, where they kind of just didn't have a plan for them. So you ultimately, with whoever you sign, you got to make sure that you got a plan. And if they come from a good reputation, you got to make sure they get pay-per-view matches. You got to, make sure every wrestler really appeals. So I'm happy that Mike Bailey's in this. I do think Omega's going to win, but it would be more good if they had Ricochet win the international title, just to do something different, to swerve people, do something unexpected. The next match with Billy Starks versus Mercedes Moné, and I really appreciate what they did with Billy Starks. That, first of all, they showed her promo. They showed a promo package of what she did in Ring of Honor. I'm very proud of that, because that's good continuity. If she's challenging for the AEW TBS Championship against Mercedes Moné, a person with 4 belts, you got to establish who this person is, especially if you spend time in Ring of Honor. developing her skills and talents. Really, it does not make sense for her to be like, oh well, that doesn't exist really. You got to make sure that matters. The next thing that is that the announcers mentioned that she was a Ring of Honor, TV champion, the women's inaugural. So I'm happy they mentioned that. And they also mentioned that she's wrestled for over 500 matches, and she's still at a very young age. She was wrestling since she was 13. I believe she's like 19 or 20 now. The other thing is that Billie Starkz is a little controversial to me because I don't like her. She kind of looks very timid and quirky, but she does kind of come off as like timid, or like she doesn't feel like she feels like she's in over her head, or she feels like, like a stranger in a strange land. And I think you have to be very careful with that for two reasons. That number one, it's a good underdog thing. So if she kind of goes from a person with no confidence to a lot of confidence, or maybe she takes what Mercedes Moné says about her very seriously, and then she learns to regain her confidence over time, like Hinata Hyuga in Naruto, then you have a good character transformation and somebody who can get over very big. That would be good for her. But if she's going to be like Harley Cameron, where she's going to be her worst enemy with her character, like always be timid and it goes nowhere really, that's going to hurt her. The same way Harley Cameron loves comedy too much, and she's jumping back into comedy, Harley Cameron. So that's not going to help her long term, really, because that's going to say, okay, she's going to be like an Orange Cassidy. She doesn't take it too seriously. So with Billie Starkz, I just hope that, there is an evolution of her character. Like she goes from being timid or feeling a little like, maybe this isn't right for me. Maybe I'm in over my head. I'm listening to Mercedes Moné and her snob behavior, and then other people are picking on me, and I'm going to overcome all that. I'm eventually going to gain the title. Like, that's a good story for Billie Starkz. So hopefully they are smart enough to do that, and not something like, okay, well, she's timid and she's kind of shy. She looks like, like honestly, like bringing a child to an adult party, really, where they feel very, very out of place, really. So I just hope they do something with that. So yeah, the match was really good. Billie Starkz, she kind of reminds me a little bit of Jeff Hardy. She does like the senton, the swanton bomb a bunch of times. They exchange pile drivers. Billie Starkz did a very vicious spot where she threw Mercedes Moné upside down into the ring corner. It was called like a water wheel drop. That's actually a very, very vicious move. And she did a brain buster where she dropped Mercedes Moné onto her knees, and then German suplex. And what I really like is that, like they showed a lot of offense of Billie Starkz, and I really appreciate that, because you really, really need to just say, okay, she's actually, it's not like John's, you need to show that, okay, well, she's not being annihilated or whatever, really. You have to kind of show that she actually has like a rookie potential, really. So Mercedes Moné obviously wins. You don't put a title on Billie Starkz this early. But like I said, remember the F word, follow-up. Where does Billie Starkz go from there? Is she going to challenge maybe Penelope Ford? Is she going to challenge Megan Bayne? Is she going to challenge, like Soraya or another heel on the roster? What are you going to do with Billie Starkz? Are you going to do an Owen Hart match with her at Dynasty and try to get that started? What about you do Harley Cameron versus Billie Starkz? What do you do with Billie Starkz? And like I've said, that, unfortunately, Harley Cameron has a lot of potential, but if she's going to like wear the hologram mask, if she's going to do funny comedy, and if she's going to say, okay, well, you know what, I just don't evolve my character, then fuck Harley Cameron, really, because she has something really special. And if she can't do that, then Billie Starkz is the person that could be, from somebody who doesn't draw money to somebody drawing money. She has like that overcoming type of character, really. So hopefully they do something with Billie Starkz. I really think the potential's there. AEW just has to give her a character development, and it's a really easy one. Timid to believing in herself. The Hinata Hyuga type of thing from Naruto. The next thing is that MJF is interviewed, and I really liked what he said, that he disses Darby Allin and other people who want to become AEW champion. I like that he mentioned Darby Allin, because a lot of people know that that's kind of really the plan, is that they're going to make Darby Allin the world champion at AEW All In. So like how MJ was talking about, like what the fans are feeling. That's going to be Darby Allin, so why not diss him? And then also too, we don't know if he's ever going to come back, alive. So I like that. I like that reference. And then the other thing is that he says that next week he's going to respond to MVP's business card. So, like I've said, I'm predicting and I'm hoping for they do MVP, they do Bobby Lashley versus MJF. I think that would be a really, really great match if they have that. I think that's the match they should have because you have to have, Dynasty has to have matches that really matter. You don't want this to feel like a filler pay-per-view or like a pay-per-view that's like, hey, we're going to, just not give our best, really. They have to give their best, really. So I think Bobby Lashley versus MJF, I'm praying for that match. I think that would be a great match. So, and I also like this to give you something to look forward to next week. This is something people want to see. And then the other thing is that you had Adam Copeland versus Moxley in a street fight. I was actually very surprised. I think the worst thing about this show is that this should have been for your main event. But I'm going to say this, that I don't mind Toni Storm being in the main event because sometimes in professional wrestling, you need women to main event the show because, it's just a good look to say, hey, it's not just the men's stuff. So I can appreciate companies doing that once in a while, even if there's a world championship match or something on the card. Really, I can appreciate that once in a while, but I do feel like for AEW right now, it's like the time that they have to show everybody that they can make a good show and a show with a good outline and a good structure. So this should have been the main event of the show, and I will 100% agree with that. And the other thing, too, is that it was a very controversial show. I mean, it was a very controversial match, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. That, first of all, it opens with them, fighting inside the inventory truck, and Copeland uses Jeff Jarrett's guitar. So I was saying to myself, it would be cool if they actually fought in the snow or outside in the snow for a while. Like, if it was actually snowing, they should have done that. That would have been a lot better, even if it may seem a little funny or a little silly. And I was saying to myself, one thing that was bad about this part was when they were fighting backstage, the mics were on very, very low. They should have captured the audience a lot louder because then that way it would have actually pop a lot more. You're watching two people fight over the world title. The mics need to be on max, really. You have to kind of be like, oh, well, these people are losing their minds, not just like soft mics. Whoever the audio person is did a bad job. Put them on a 90-day probation. Tony Khan. So... And also, too, like a few weeks, I think Ricochet's mic wasn't working. They have Adam Copeland. So Tony Khan has to really put his audio people on, probation. If they fuck up a few more times, you got to hire more people. They don't deserve the job. They're going to fuck up a lot. So Copeland uses a trash can. He suplexes Moxley on the ringside floor. They fight in the crowd. It was kind of gross because Moxley spits on Cope, really. And once again, I'm very, very happy with this because once again, they're fighting the audience for a street fight type of match. They're not saying, hey, we're going to have, Chris Statlander and Megan Bayne fight in the crowd because it doesn't make sense, really. You have to make sure that there's a build to something like that. And you also have to make sure that there is a stipulation that says that that's okay, because otherwise then it's like anybody can do whatever the hell they want, really. I really liked this match, and I also said this was a really great match because the other thing that happened was this was something I really wanted to see on AEW. I was looking forward to this match. People may say it's redundant, but yeah, I don't mind seeing like a repeat pay-per-view main event on regular television. Like WWE does it all the time, really. You got to have something that appeals. Yes, this draws an audience. So Copeland whips Moxley with a lead board. Moxley does a paradigm shift on an announcer's desk. There's multiple chair shots. Copeland does a superplex off the top rope. And also, I like what they said about, you saw Nana drinking coffee, and they said, hey, remember, Swerve was attacked by Moxley, so he's going to be out this week. So I appreciate them mentioning this because there's some people who don't watch Collision. So that's great continuity, and I appreciate that. And then at the end of the match, Nana gets on the phone. So I appreciate all that because that's continuity, and that's saying that, hey, even though people don't watch Collision, what's going on. And AEW struggles like a motherfucker with continuity. So I appreciate the usage of continuity because this is what's killing AEW. What's killing AEW is there is no continuity, and now they're having continuity, and they need to keep having continuity. and that's gonna be the maker and breaker of AEW, because otherwise then it feels like you're watching random wrestling and random shit. Really, you got to have a structure, you got to have a story. One good element of storytelling is foreshadowing, continuity, and then also payoffs and other things like that. Copeland brings out Spike, and Moxley counters with a cutter. Cope hits Moxley in the back twice with Spike and suplexes Moxley onto the Spike 2x4. And that's what I said about continuity. We've seen this many times with Adam Copeland bringing out Spike, really. And he doesn't do that all the time. So he does that once in a while. So he does it sparingly, but he does it he does it when it's appropriate. So that's what I mean by the right continuity and the right story. So he's bringing out weapons that were part of the story, really, that they've told, really. That he brings it out when he needs it, and it's an important thing, really. So I really think that, so I give him a lot of credit for this. If it's Moxley bleeding all the time, really, every single match, then it's nothing special. But if he did that once in a while during these big matches, then that's when it matters. So, I like Copeland using this sparingly. This was appropriate to the story. It works. And they did a lot of shots of the spiked board in Moxley and people trying to pull it out. And what I would say to this is that, I'm okay with that, because it doesn't feel, because this is something Copeland initiated. So it doesn't feel like Moxley was being Mr. Shock Value. This feels like, Copeland brought something in, and he wasn't doing this for shock value. He was doing this because he always brings us in for, the matches where it matters. And obviously Moxley's such an asshole that he deserves this. So I feel like the uses of violence was appropriate. I didn't feel like, this was kind of like, I didn't feel like this was unnecessary or them just trying to be shock value. I felt like this was part of the story. And then the other part of the story is that the Death Riders are back and they assault Copeland, and I felt like a little mad about this, because one big problem is that this is what hurt the match, was that they had two interferences. They had the Death Riders and then they had the Christian family. So the problem is that Moxley has to win clean. If he always uses cheating every single time, it does not become special. He becomes just like Bobby Roode in TNA Wrestling, because when Bobby Roode was the champion, what happened? He always relied on cheating. You got to have a heel champion that does both. They can win clean, and then they can, win with cheating or whatever, really. You have to have both. But I don't remember Moxley ever having a match without cheating or interference or anything like that, really. You have to make sure, if he's going to beat Swerve, there has to be no cheating. It has to be one-on-one type of thing, because otherwise it becomes monotonous and redundant, and then it makes him look like a weak champion. And then the other thing too is that they had the Christian faction in there, and I kind of said it's a little overbooking, and I'm a little okay with it as well, because I don't want Nick Wayne versus Christian Cage, because Nick Wayne, as I said, he looks like a high school freshman. So Nick Wayne is not believable in any way, in my opinion, to be any type of champion or protege or whatever, really. He's not even like another version of Darby Allin, really. He would have to go to the gym with Kyle Fletcher, gain a bunch of muscles, spend some time in Ring of Honor, and actually be legit, really. I don't think Nick Wayne has it. He just looks like a high school freshman. He has to kind of just look. He has to look more formidable. So with this, the good thing is that it doesn't look like they're going to do Nick Wayne versus Christian Cage. So that was kind of the thing too, is that, that was good. But in the end of the day, Moxley once again loses, and there's like 11 people interfering. I was happy FTR came out and helped Adam Copeland, because that's good continuity. Maria Shafir got involved. Willow came out. So I was saying to myself, this kind of sets up a couple of things. This could set up AEW Anarchy in the Arena, rated FTR versus the Death Riders. And I think that's what they should do. The other thing is that it could set up rated FTR versus the Christian family at Dynasty, or it could set up rated FTR versus the Death Riders for the trios titles. So any of these things can happen at Dynasty. So So those are good options. But I think the other issue that happened at the very end was that Dax Harwood, if I'm correct, the guy who looks like Prince Albert, um, Lord Tensai, like that guy. What happens is that he gets mad with Cash Wheeler and Adam Copeland. So they should not be splitting FTR because I've not seen them speak on the microphone. They're not going to be good single stars. It's going to be like what you're seeing with Max Caster. It's going to kill them, really. So they have to be together. You have to kind of be like, okay, well, this guy's a little heated because he's frustrated, with just, either losing too much or maybe he's just kind of frustrated with the whole Death Rider situation. You have to kind of say, okay, well, he got mad, but he's still going to fight with his people, really. He's not going to, turn heel or whatever, because Dax Harwood turning heel would be just, it would be the opposite of John Cena and The Rock. It would just be like, just stupid and pointless and forgettable, fart in church. So that's how I feel about it. So, and then the other part of it is, like I said, the controversy was that there was way, way too much interference. Because the problem is that the more wrestlers you have, the more it feels like a clusterfuck. And then sometimes people get tired out, really, when you see so many people, because you have to, process a lot of things. And I also will say that the other thing, too, is that you're setting up a lot of different ideas, really. And it's like what I said, Maria Shafir versus Will Nightingale needs to happen. And Rated FTR versus the Christian family, or Rated FTR versus, the Rated FTR versus, the Death Riders. It needs to happen, really. And also, too, I don't want to see a 9-way triple threat match between the three teams. That's probably what's going to happen, but that's a bad idea because, as I said, then you're going to have to focus on the actions of 9 people, and why should we, and that's just too much, really. Save the triple threat for 3 people, save for Omega, Speedball, and Ricochet. Don't do too many triple threat matches. And it also doesn't feel special when you have too many of that, or triple tag team or whatever, really. So I'm not sure where this is going to lead to, what's next for Adam Copeland. But I'm also happy because they're going to do Swerve versus Moxley, because then there would be 3 title shots for Adam Copeland in less than a month. And then the other thing, too, is, like we've kind of said before, you don't want this to become like TNA wrestling, where it's the old WWE guy actually trying to, have a shot at glory, really. And I think for Swerve and Moxley, that's such a unique combination. They're going to have great promos. There's going to be a great, thing to that. So I think that putting Copeland on the back burner and focusing on something else is good. Just make it Moxley versus Strickland. That's what they should do. The next match is Will Ospreay versus AR Fox. And some of you may be surprised, but I wasn't really into this match for a couple of things. That, we know who's going to win. AR Fox is just a jobber. And they're both high flyers. And you just had a really epic world heavyweight title match. So I felt very fatigued. Honestly, this should have been, the 9 o'clock main event or something like that. Or even the penultimate match before the main event. This was not booked well in the card. And then again, I'm happy that he was not, I was happy Ospreay was not in the opening, because you can't open every show with Ospreay, because it's almost like, what, we might as well put the title on him, But yeah, as I said, that's something. And I also want to say that Adam Page is talking about entering the Owen Hart tournament. And he also says that one of his goals is to make sure Swerve never becomes champion. So that's good, because you're saying to yourself, what odds is Swerve going to have to overcome at Dynasty? You could easily do something where Swerve becomes the champion, or Swerve doesn't become the champion. And that could be due to the Death Riders. That could also be due to the Hurt Syndicate, or the Hurt Syndicate can help him, or Adam Page can get involved and fuck his opportunity up. And then Swerve and Adam Page are going to be in the Owen Hart tournament. But the problem is that Swerve and Adam Page, they had a really great feud, but it has to end, really. You can't jump back into it, because it gets to be like, oh, well, is this all elite wrestling, or is this all repeat wrestling? You can't keep repeating the same stories. So my hope and what I'm hoping for is that they have an Owen Hart match at AEW Dynasty, and it's going to be Will Ospreay versus Hangman Adam Page. I think that would be a really great match. And just remember what happened last year, that it was Ospreay versus Bryan Danielson, and that was considered one of the greatest matches. So have some great continuity. So that would be really good continuity if they say, okay, we're going to have another year where Ospreay does a banger match, because he's one of those people that could win or should win the Owen Hart tournament. I don't think Darby Allin should win it. He doesn't deserve it. He's been out too long. So you need to have an Owen Hart match, and I really think that the best one you could do is Hangman versus Ospreay, and then you can kind of do one with the women. You can do Harley Cameron versus Billy Starks, or you can do like Harley Cameron versus, Saraya or Thunder Rosa or Penelope Ford, something like that, So, or like I said, Mercedes Moné versus, Harley Cameron. Have Harley Cameron beat Mercedes Moné, and she goes through the tournament, and no titles are in the line, really. So, the main event match was Penelope Ford. No, it was Megan Bayne versus Chris Statlander with Tony Storm on commentary. So, again, I wasn't really into this match because I got really gassed from watching the World Heavyweight title match. So I didn't see much of it, but I appreciate Tony Storm on commentary and on comedy. And she was saying things like, the bigger they fall, the harder they come, and other things like that. So she was doing a lot of the sexual innuendo. But the thing about it is that what made it a watchable main event was that you had Tony Storm in it. You had Tony Storm interject your comedy. You ended with Tony Storm saying, hey, Megan Bayne, we're going to have a match at Dynasty. Boom. It's ultimately saying, you have an idea for a match for the main event, but you have to put something in there to make it feel like a main event. And what makes it feel like a main event is Tony Storm. The same way, or you have to have a match that's main event worthy. You have to, it's either a match that's main event worthy, or you have a match that's not main event worthy, but you have the right people involved in it as managers or commentators to actually make it feel like something. So overall, really great show. The continuity was a lot better. That they did not do a lot of, violations of rules in regular matches. Like a referee sees it, or like I said, a referee sees two people go outside the ring for 4 or 5 minutes and the match continues. No, that doesn't happen. I do think that one thing, and they did have a match that you wanted to see, which was the World Heavyweight title match, and it had the right result. And then also too, they did some great setups. Swerve and Mox are going to speak next week, and then next week it's going to be MJF speaking to MVP. So, once again, Dynasty has a potential to be a banger, to be a great show. And then the other thing about Dynasty that we have to talk about is that one bad thing about Revolution was that there was a lot of repeat matches. So they need to kind of have some more matches on the show that are not repeats. So I really, really look forward to Dynasty. I think I'm going to get my money's worth going down to Philadelphia. And I also give them points that that's not going to be Orange Cassidy versus Kenny Omega, because the problem is, like I've said, you can't have comedy kicks wrestle Omega. You have to make sure it really matters. So I think the other thing that I would say is that they just have to look at their roster right now and really, really just say, hey, who matters? Hey, who should we have be involved? And they have to matter on Collision and Dynamite. I think Hobbs should be having a match. Harley Cameron should be having a match. Billy Stark should be having a match. And then the last thing I want to talk about is they did a promo with the Outrunners, and I was a little annoyed by this because, there's no good follow-up. They just lost to Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin. So they have to be what do we want? Or do we want to go through a bunch of people and actually just, maybe we're going to face FTR, or maybe we're going to face another team and gain some momentum. We're going to ask Tony Khan for a pay-per-view match because we feel like we deserve it. So what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with FTR? And then with the Outrunners, because they're over with the crowd, so you have to kind of capitalize on that. So they should be challenging. They should be winning matches, try to get another opportunity at All In to gain those titles. And then the next thing that I would say is that you had you had a Bandito promo, and Bandito sounds terrible on the mic. Like he kind of sounds wimpy. He has like a very stereotypical Mexican accent. Hey, like my name is Bandito. Oh, and he just has no sense of. He has no bravado. He has no like. You hurt my family, really. He has no sense. He has no amp to him. He doesn't have any amp to him, and that's not good. That shows that he can't be in the spot that he's in, really. You either has to have a manager, at least with Penta. Like Penta has a really gruff voice, really, but like with Bandino, he sounds like Rey Mysterio, where he doesn't have a lot of like just anger or a lot of like intensity, really. He sounds a little too gentle. So yeah, he has to work on that. Like he has to work on that. But like I've said, I think Chris Jericho wants to have a match with Bandito because that's easier than him facing Hobbs. So Jericho's doing what's easiest for him. So that was kind of like another low point. But yeah, overall the positives outweigh the negatives for this AEW Dynamite show.